Welcome to The Long Way Home. My name is Josh Bearheart Hawk, and I'm here to share a little bit about myself with you guys out there. It's not my first attempt at a podcast. This is my second attempt at a podcast, and I wanted to do something a little bit different. So, first of all, I want to introduce myself. This is the first episode. The premiere is going to be coming out at some point, probably on Patreon, and who knows where else. At the moment, it's just going to be a behind-the-scenes type of thing on Patreon for anybody that wants to sign up for it. And it'll probably release on YouTube and other podcasting platforms later. I'm not 100% sure where we're going to go with this. So just buckle in and let's have some fun. So the entire idea of this podcast came to me because it's been something I've been thinking about for a while, wanting to share. I've got a ton of life experience. I've done a bunch of different things over the course of my life. I've had some really hard knocks. I've had to get up from a lot of different things. And I kind of wanted to share my experiences with anybody out there who might be, maybe going through some tough times or going through things that they're trying to figure out how they're going to get through, because life can be a huge challenge at times, and it can be really difficult for people, especially when you deal with mental health issues and that kind of stuff, which I've dealt with throughout my entire life. And so it's something that I wanted to share with people out there, and especially because, I've been working on growing a YouTube channel. I've got a Twitch stream that I do, and a couple of books that I've published. So I've got a lot of stuff out there now, and I just feel like this is just another way, an outlet that I can kind of reach new people, reach new audiences, and share some of my experiences in a different sort of way. A podcast works perfect for that kind of thing, I think. So that kind of covers, who I am, what I do for a living, that kind of stuff. I don't want these things to be too long, but I do want to keep them in the realm of, covering whatever I need to cover and talking about whatever I need to talk about on a particular episode. This first one here, obviously, is an introduction. I'm not going to go too in-depth, but I do want to talk a little bit about my early childhood and kind of where I grew up and where I come from, so you can kind of get an idea of like who I am as a person. So I've lived most of my life in Ohio. I was born in Columbus, which is the capital of Ohio. It's one of the three biggest cities in the state. I don't know officially where it's at in population count, but I know it's one of the three biggest. And early on, I only spent my first few years there before my mother and my father decided that, hey, we're going to move. We want to get out of the big city. They had me and my brother, my two brothers. My youngest brother had just been born when we decided to move to Mount Vernon. And Mount Vernon, Ohio is a small town. It's in northeast central area of Ohio. It's about an hour or so away from Columbus. And so we moved up there right before I started kindergarten. And so I started kindergarten up there, and I don't remember a whole lot from that time. There's things that I remember from the house and stuff like that, some basic stuff. I have some big memories from there as far as I know we had rats in the house. There was something to do with rats and a disagreement with the landlord. We didn't live in the first house we moved up there to very long before we wound up moving to another house that wasn't too far away. I just remember all the houses up there being really old. So that was the biggest thing that stuck out in my mind living in Mount Vernon. And I think that's just, it's changed a lot. I go back up there now because I still live in Ohio, and I still go around the state. I've got friends that live in Mount Vernon. So like I'll go back up there now, and it's a completely different city. And that's going to be one of the things I'm going to talk about at some point, growing and whether you can actually go home. The whole idea behind this podcast is the reason I called it The Long Way Home is because I think at a certain point, as we all grow older, we all get to the age where we're trying to find our way back home. And there's the old saying that, you can't go home again. And it's true to an extent, because no matter where your home is, and maybe you're lucky enough to have been somebody who grew up with a family homestead. I wasn't one of those people. I didn't grow up with a family homestead, but maybe you did, and you can go back there and you can still see your old family homestead. But even then, it's not the same as it was when you lived there when you were growing up. And for me, that's kind of how Mount Vernon is, because I don't have a family homestead, but I go back up there and so much has changed. And I can point to different places and I can say, oh, I remember this happening there, that happening there. I can remember where where I was when I first got my driving permit, where my mom took me to do my first little bout of driving in the parking lot of what is now the Kroger's up there. Like, so there's so many different memories that I have of that area, but it's not the same. And in that way, I could never really go home. And that's the way it is for all of us. We can never really go to what we think of in our minds as home, but you take the long way there, and you kind of go around. And when you come full circle as you grow older and as you get into adulthood and get married and have kids and all that kind of stuff, and you start to kind of come full circle and come back to realizing what home truly is. And home is not really a place as much as it is the people that you surround yourself with, the people that are in your life. And it's something that I've been reflecting on a lot lately, and especially over this past year. I had I went through a big event this past summer, summer 2023, where I was pretty close to losing my life. I was in the hospital for a few days, and it's a thing I'll talk about in a future episode. I'm not going to go too in depth with it here, but I've gone through a lot of big events throughout my life. My mom passed away right after I graduated high school. I joined the Army and deployed to Iraq and spent a lot of time. I've got a million stories from that time in my life. So, and then getting married, and I've been married for 15 years. I've got kids, one of which is getting ready to graduate high school in a year and a half. The other two aren't far behind. So I've got all of these things, all of this life experience and these stories and these things that I really want to tell and share. And I'm going to be doing that over time. The idea behind this is unscripted. I'm just going to kind of go at it. And I'll have a list of things. Like, I've got a list of things for this episode, the premiere episode. Like, this is what I wanted to talk about. So that's about the extent of it. And then it's going to be off the cuff. And that's just kind of the way that I do things, because that, to me, that I want to be as original and as straightforward as I can, because I want anybody that's listening to this, anybody that takes the time to actually go through and listen to the full podcast, I want them to know who I am and be able to get a real sense of that, and not some facade that, there's nothing else there, so that's important to me. And as we go through this, I've got a lot of episodes planned out. So bear with me. This one's going to be shorter. Obviously, I'm almost at the end of this one, I think. But normally, I'm going to try to keep them between 10 and 15 minutes, I think. But it depends on the stories. So if that sounds like something that you're interested in, if you made it this far, first of all, thank you. Like, subscribe. Like I said, if this might be on YouTube, probably going to be on Patreon. So that's all stuff that's available for anybody out there. And anybody else that's interested, like, subscribe, tell your friends about it. Let me know what you think. And that's all I got for now. I'm going to thank you all for listening, and everybody have a great rest of your day. And I'll talk to you in the next one.